Welcome to Proud Peeps. I'm your host, Justin Anovic. Today, I am joined by Griffin Cox. He's a previous web developer, product manager, according to LinkedIn, aspiring comedian, and he's current co-founder of ezbot. Welcome to the program today, Griffin.
Thanks for having me. We actually have two additional little guests here. My dogs, hopefully they won't chime in too much, but Emma and Otto are also here. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Nice. Technically four, because there's two plants behind you. So, I guess there's multiple guests there.
And there's a story there.
So you posted a joke. What do you call a group of machine learning engineers? And the punchline is, do you remember?
Oh, geez. It's been a minute.
A neural network.
A neural network, yep.
That was unbelievably nerdy, yet funny.
Yeah, I'm full of dad jokes. I'm like a dad without a child, so.
I have my own quota of dad jokes that I personally have in my head every single day. And when I hit it, I tell people I just hit my quota.
Yeah, people tell me I've hit my quota, and I usually just kind of keep going.
Right, exactly.
Life is hard. I think comedy makes it easier. Of course, there are inappropriate jokes, but dad jokes generally, they have haters. They have people that love them, but I always love them. So.
Yes, I love it. I have my kids roll their eyes, then I know I achieved something. So,
totally.
So I have, during this process of doing this podcast, I've spoken to multiple co-founders, and I'm always in awe of individuals who make that leap and, go to start a new company. Can you tell me just a little bit about your experience with Easy being a co-founder? Again, I'm super impressed and always in awe because I never felt like I could take that step. It seems a little scary, obviously possibly rewarding, but would you just talk a little bit about what you guys are doing at ezbot?
Yeah, sure. So at ezbot, we do holistic optimization that's continuous. It's for websites, works on any website. It is kind of like experimentation or A/B testing, as it's sometimes called. It's kind of like personalization. It's kind of like recommendations, but it is something totally new. With the goal of serving the best possible version of a website and soon apps to any given user. And we're trying to make that process as easy as possible for small and medium-sized businesses, folks that don't have the traffic to run traditional experimentation tools, for example, and really just people that want to get away from releasing one version of their website to their entire audience, which is, if you kind of think about it, a pretty risky thing to do.
I think that sounds so cool. And I want to come back to the journey, the thought process behind it, what you're experiencing now. Before I get into that, I know that you actually came up with an idea that was equivalent to Facebook Marketplace, but before Facebook Marketplace came out. It sounds like such a really cool story. Would you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this was before I, really truly became a software engineer. We might maybe have time for that story too, but this was when I was teaching myself to code, and so I went through a self-paced boot camp, and what I identified was a need in a product that I actually already loved, and that was Craigslist. So Craigslist, I checked today, it hasn't actually changed that much since 5-6 years ago or something, when I had this idea for garage sale. But what I noticed when I was using Craigslist, just as a user, was that it didn't feel very safe. You never knew who you were going to meet, and what intentions they had for you. Dun dun dun. And so I figured there was a pretty easy solution to that, and that was requiring some social proof or just linking all accounts to social accounts, so that way there'd at least be some social repercussions or potentially help solving a crime. God forbid it happened. So I actually built it, and again, called Garage Sale. People could upload, a description of their product, a price, how they wanted to meet that, which was actually also a feature compared to where Craigslist is today, I think, and an set of images. And I was preparing to go to market, and I say go to market because that phrase means something completely different to me now. But just out of college, I was preparing to go to market, and then Facebook announced Facebook Marketplace. Given Facebook's size and, their pre-existing user base, I immediately knew I was dead in the water. So I just folded up shop, right away. But it was a good idea. And I swear I had it before Facebook Marketplace was publicly announced.
I mean, that's a pretty cool story, but it also, I mean, goes to your thought process on thinking of new things, better ways to have people operate, creating better experiences. But I also think that like as you describe it, your unorthodox professional career kind of lends itself to where you're at today, and it kind of bookends today versus that example. Not to go like in the biography of Griffin, but would you just talk through about that unorthodox career that you've taken? Because I think it's like really helps explain where you're at today.
Sure. Yeah. So I went to University of Chicago. Initially, I was a chemistry major, but that's a story for another time. More seriously, I was next a computer science major, which you might guess given that I became a software engineer. But I got the lowest grades in my entire academic career in those few classes of computer science that I took. I cried. I bled. I had so many late nights, and I barely passed those classes. They were so hard. Really turned me off to the field. At a certain point, I just realized that the way they were teaching it was more about theory. What algorithm runs the fastest and how to prove it. Than engineering, how to solve real problems. And so that's when I had decided to sign up for that self-driven course called Thinkful, and I over the summers, over a couple summers, just taught myself to code. But before we get to that, I switched to econ because that is the default major at University of Chicago. I always joke if you throw a rock on campus, you stand a pretty good chance of hitting an econ major. It's kind of the default. And so I was happy doing econ for a while. I had a graduate student, though, teaching one of my major level classes that taught it at such a level that I couldn't even understand the homework. Like I couldn't read it. It was in Greek. And he basically taught it as if we knew proof-based math, which was not a requirement for the course. That was rectified at the end of the quarter, and the university did something almost unprecedented and basically just curved all the remaining students to a B, which like never happens at U Chicago. But by then, I'd withdrawn and changed majors. That's how terrible it was.
Did they do it for just that class, or every class the
class.
professor? Wow.
Well, actually, I only know if it was, about that class and that one. It was a graduate student that was teaching it, but it happened, and by then I'd already taken what we call the W or withdrawal, not a win. So I went to back to the drawing board, as I'm guessing will be a theme throughout this conversation, and switched majors to psychology. Really enjoyed learning about how people think. You wouldn't really guess that I went into computer science, given that it's, just not at all about writing code. I studied how to design experiments, which, might be a hint actually as to where I'm going with this whole thing. But I ended up sort of tailoring my major to behavioral economics, pursuing my interest in that. And then when I went into engineering after graduation, I really didn't think that I would apply my psychology training directly, at least not the experimental design aspects. I just never planned to practice. I just thought it would be a useful skill to have, and it has been. But along the way, I ran into A/B testing, this time in the digital space. And this at a company, a fintech company called Innova in Chicago. where there was a rudimentary tool in place to do some A/B testing that product managers were using. I got involved with that, and very long story short, I identified a need to prove that one UI framework would be more performant and yield better business outcomes than another. And that sort of critical insight is what led me to Optimizely, being a product that can make in-memory decisions. So it satisfied that use case. I recommended it to the company. They said, why don't you just run this experimentation program and spread it to other teams? I did that with a colleague of mine, Chetan Kapoor, who's now at eBay, and that's where I just kind of kept exploring experimentation. And the fundamental difference in digital experimentation is the sample sizes. We're talking millions of people participating in an experiment that could run just 2 weeks. And that compared to the studies I was reading in college, where like having 83 participants was considered good. And just the pace that you could test was astounding to me, and that's the thread I've been pulling on ever since.
That's so cool. And I think it does speak to who you are, that you're fine kind of starting over again because you started going down a path. You didn't see what it was, pull the plug as quickly as you possibly could before you got too invested and tried it again. That's really cool. I guess that brings me to the curious moment that I have is of all the things that you've done, accomplished, what are you most proud of?
I am most proud of following my dreams and actually starting a business to solve a problem that I believe so many people have. Unlocking small businesses' digital potential. It's not something that they have the resources necessarily to do with traditional methods, but it's something that I found that they all want to do. And it benefits them. It leads to more checkouts, for example, in the e-commerce space, but it also benefits their users.
Following your dreams. I love that. I mean, that's kind of been
It's
like
a little
the
cliche, right?
no, I mean, it's cool. Like it's literal. Like it's not cliche if it's literal. Like that's exactly what you've done. And your journey, I mean, it's cool that you know what you want, you figured it out, you have ideas and you go do it. And I'm sure, like we started off with, I'm sure being a co-founder of a business has tons of up and downs. And, if you can't follow your dreams and you can't stick with it, like, who's to say that you're not going to wake up tomorrow morning and be like, I'm done, but continuing to follow your dreams to see what the potential is. That's really impressive. I mean, I don't think I have that in me, like, the co-founders that I've spoken to and yourself. But would you continue to just elaborate on like, some of your learnings that you've had at ezbot now?
Yeah. Well, it's something else we kind of talked about a little bit briefly too. This is what I thought was going to be a sprint. I thought in 6 months I'd have an MVP, which is pretty quick for an AI-based product. We've rolled our own AI. We're not using an LLM off the shelf or anything like that. It's true reinforcement learning. It's old school, rooted in the 60s actually, but using modern frameworks and techniques and that sort of stuff. I thought it was a sprint. I thought I'd just kill myself over it for 6 months, and then I'd get some big check, and then I could relax. That's sometimes how the story of startups is presented. I think it's true for a very small fraction of all the startups that end up succeeding. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you have lunch with a co-founder, or sorry, an investor, and they really like their lunch. They kind of like you, and then they fund you. Like I hear stories about that, but far more often it's like a 2 to 5 year marathon where you are doing things you've never done before, wearing pretty much every hat. I know a little bit about taxes and HR. I've had to really spread out from my core competencies of engineering and product, just wearing all the hats, so to speak. And I've had to retool and think about it as a marathon, because for the first time in my life, I'm 31, I've had to actually put time and energy into my health. It's always been something I've taken for granted. It's my body has always been there to support me. The limits that I faced were always surmountable. There was always more time in the day. But you can only do that for so long. And, as somebody that's 31, now I have to dedicate time to exercise, for my mental health, for my physical health. And I have to actually, slow down a little bit so that I can keep going.
I like it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. I've I've always tried to explain, like, there are elements that are sprints, there's elements that are 5K, there's elements of marathons. Lately, I've said it's a repeating 5K, but you don't know how long it is, and ultimately it is a marathon. But you cross that finish line of the 5K, and you're like, oh, that was just a checkpoint, and you don't really know. Like, you have no idea, is this 26.2 miles? Is it 5K? And it is important because, in the sales world, it's every quarter. In B2B software, every quarter. So it's a sprint. For a product person, there's a marathon element, that this is going to be multi-year long process. You got to incrementally get there. As a co-founder, it's like the amalgamation of all of those things. Like, you're simultaneously, the sprint, you're simultaneously in the 5K, and that there's a marathon underway. And I'm sure your relationship, like you were saying, to your health and your body, like, if this truly is a marathon, your body might not be prepared for it, and you got to train it in so many ways for it, as well as your mind.
Yeah.
So I
As well
like
as your
those.
finances.
True.
Like,
Yes.
yeah, gosh, us, bootstrapping, which is what we did for so long, really is draining, on, finances, but also mental, physical health,
Yeah.
losing that safety net, really investing that safety net in a business. We ended up raising a successful round, from friends and family. And, I chalk that up to, my lifetime's worth of good karma, being a good
Mm.
person to so many people, that by the time I said, hey guys, I have a good idea, here's the data, I think it's going to work, they were there to support me. It also is a privilege. I know people that have the means to support me. I don't take that lightly. But between bootstrapping, between the three of us, my two co-founders and I, and the friends and family around that we did, we've gotten this far and still have runway to go. It really
How do you
takes
measure the
a
micro
village.
moments, though, of success, right? Like, because it would be like, hey, we closed
Yeah.
this $300,000 deal. We renewed these 250 customers. How do you measure the micro moments to realize that you're making incremental progress, even though that large goal still seems a little far away? How do you make sure that you keep yourself motivated with those micro moments?
Yeah, well, actually, they're right behind me. So houseplants,
Oh,
about
not
three to
Otto and Emma.
yeah, no, yeah, about 3 to 6 months ago, I realized that I needed a better way to celebrate my wins. We had a lot of micro wins, milestones hit that just went uncelebrated because there's always something else to do with a startup. That I decided to get a house plant every time I have a notable win. My partner Maddie is a huge fan of this. She loves houseplants, and so it was a natural fit. And I have three of my favorites behind me, but I'm actually running out of room for houseplants at this point. I feel like it. They also have the added benefit of cleaning the air, so I enjoy that. But yeah,
Have
it
you
just
changed your
really takes time.
scale of what you consider a micro win to adjust? Because you can't move into a bigger place yet. But have you
Yeah.
adjusted your scale of what those micro wins are?
Well, the plants actually kind of keep getting bigger. I think the next plant will be the biggest plant, far bigger than these, because I coded a Chrome extension for the first time. That's our visual editor that allows non-technical people to, edit their website without needing to involve an engineer. And it just got approved in the Chrome Web Store, so it's publicly available. You do need a subscription to use it for now, but that was such a huge win for me because I don't know if you know anything about Chrome extensions, but it's a very niche ecosystem that even if you're a great generalist engineer, you kind of got to learn how the different parts kind of talk to each other. But anyway, that was such a big relief that it got approved by the Chrome Web Store on the second attempt, that I think I'm going to have to get like a mini tree.
This is my first plant ever that I have in my office, and I have blinds here. I open the blinds, give it some sun. I made sure to select a plant that doesn't require sun all the time, just in case. And it is interesting. I mean, it's like something else to take care of, but I don't have the same thought of like getting more plants as the micro wins. But actually, When I left the last company that I was with, I started to look for a job, and it was kind of the first time in my career that I was actually like looking for a job, and it was tough every week to figure out if I was making progress. So I came up with like a scoring system that if I talked to somebody new, it was 1 point. If I, it was introduced to a company, a C level, it was a 2 points, all the way up to like speaking with a board member, it was like 5 points. And I would give myself goals every week based on that scoring system. And for a while, it kind of like, it made me realize, okay, I wasn't successful this week. I was because I hit those numbers. It kind of fell off because it got a little bit arduous to do. But I agree, like those micro things to figure out if you're making progress towards your ultimate goals, those are really critical because sometimes those huge goals seem insurmountable, like a business, oh, we need to do $100 million in bookings or $1 million. Like that seems so far away if you're doing like $1,500 deals or something. How do you simultaneously look to see that you're doing positive things that bring you closer? So I love your micro wins idea and rewarding yourself as well, so you have something
Thanks.
physical. So that's really cool. So
Yeah. Did you stick with that point system? Did it work for you?
it did, and then I didn't get the job that I wanted, and I kind of like caved on my own.
Yeah.
But it was like a good like 6-8 weeks, and because it was hard, like it's hard. Like, how are you making progress in a job search,
Yeah.
right? Like, and everything wasn't equal. If it was a board member that I was talking to, like that seems more valuable.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I've encouraged others to do that if you're going through a progress like that. So.
Yeah, because and this is going to sound crazy from somebody that's all about it. Started a data-driven company, all about data-driven decision making and that sort of stuff. But it sounds like you acknowledge at a certain point the system wasn't working for you, and that it became sort of a sunk cost, and you adapted. And as you picked up on earlier in this conversation, that is probably one of my core competencies is knowing when to fold. Which is kind of funny because that's the first time I'm saying that out loud. But anyway, it's a good skill to have because once you realize it's whatever you're doing isn't working, it isn't working, right? And there isn't any shame in dropping it at that point. My technical co-founder James introduced me to this really helpful concept. It's called an OODA loop. It's observe, orient, decide, and act. And it's they occur at different levels. And so on a micro level, if you're kind of feeling stuck writing some code, for example, kind of step back, see what you're doing, orient yourself, analyze the information, update your understanding of the situation. It's a bit technical. Decide if what you're doing is still the right thing or the best thing, and potentially change. So that's sort of a micro OODA loop, but you can do them at various levels in your life. And I've been really bringing that concept to lots of different levels. And it really encourages recognizing sunk costs and changing your behavior. And so it's kind of complementary to what we're talking about, something that's really been core to my success lately.
And I think we talked kind of about that during Optimizely days. That's one of the premises I think of experimentation is that like you can figure out quickest time to failure or whatever it was
Sure.
referred to, right? And like if you want you shouldn't be doing this, how do you figure out that you shouldn't be doing that? I think, I mean, starting this new role at this company, I think that the biggest problem that I've seen across multiple companies is you don't identify what you decide not to do and why you're not doing that. Everybody communicates what you are doing. And it's
Sure.
interesting because if we were at the same company and I said, here are the 3 or 4 things that we are doing, and if I never say what we're not doing, you come to a conclusion that we're probably doing a couple of those things that you didn't mention because, of course, it's obvious. And declaring clearly from individual contributors all the way up to a board, here's what we're doing and here's what we're not doing, is probably the most profound, important thing that can be done because it removes the ambiguity. It's hard to be comprehensive about both, and people still assume. But if you start to articulate the reasons why you're not doing something, it helps to, click in people's brains as to why you should be doing something.
Yeah.
And I would assume, doing this today, like you only have a certain amount of capital. You only have a certain amount of time between the two or three of you. You only have a certain amount, of effort and all those things that you can put into it. Like you really have to make a decision very quickly as to
Yeah.
why you're going to do something. So I love that process that you guys have. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and it reminds me of this metaphor. That a larger company, kind of like Optimizely, you can kind of think about it like a cruise liner, a really big ship, harder to turn. You can't turn it on a dime, without flipping the thing over, if it were even possible, right? But a startup on the other end of the spectrum is much more like a two-person speedboat. And pros and cons to both. There's a lot more stability, a lot less seasickness, for example, on that cruise ship. And then on the speedboat side, you can move a lot faster. Like if we need to change directions 180 degrees, we can do it basically in a day because there's only 3 people involved in the decision, and we know each other, right? Larger companies much harder to do that, but pros and cons to both. I found myself craving the stability a little bit, to be honest. As a co-founder, like very much. My work-life balance has completely gone out the window. I've had to consciously take a look at that. And I'm not even going to claim to have solved that problem personally. Like I don't really do New Year's resolutions because I never actually kept them, but it's my New Year's intention to take a more serious look at my work-life balance, if only for my partner, but also for my own health. And yeah, so the metaphor, pros and cons to both sizes of company.
Yeah, that work-life balance. I mean, I've struggled with that, and like it's easy to turn off, delete Team Slack, Outlook to not be alerted to other things. I took my first vacation a couple of years ago, where it was the first time I didn't open up email or Teams, and we were in Hawaii, and I was like so proud of myself, and it was the first time as well that I also said, don't let me plan another trip while we're on a trip, because that's like my thing. Like I'm always thinking about like what the next thing is. I'm like, stay in the moment. That's why I actually got this tattoo. That's basically a broken clock to stay in the moment, to just remind myself. And
Yeah.
it is like, that was like my attempt at work-life balance. You can set up different notification patterns, different things, but if you don't have the discipline to not download that application again just to check something, it kind of defeats the purpose.
Yep.
So really appreciative of that.
Yeah.
Curious,
Yeah.
what do you have any books, TV shows, movies that you've loved recently that's impacted you a lot? Do you have anything that you can talk about there?
Yeah, a few things come to mind. So first of all, I started watching The Pit. It's actually a real-time medical drama, and so you are put in the middle of an emergency room in sort of an underfunded situation, and the amount of like literally life and death decisions that these doctors make on a minute-to-minute basis was incredible. I mean, talk about an OODA loop situation. It's very high drama though, so if that's not your cup of tea, or if you can't stand the sight of blood, definitely don't watch that. But I've been really enjoying that. Ironically, an extremely stressful program. Number two, Adam Sandler actually just did some stand-up titled, I think, "Love You" or "I Love You." It's unlike any other stand-up I've seen. You mentioned that I want to be a comedian, so I of course appreciate some good stand-up, and it is so down to earth. It's probably somewhat scripted, but it doesn't. Like what I'm about to say was probably somewhat scripted, but he appeared to have needed screens to make his sort of stand-up / prop comedy sort of skit work. The screens weren't working, and so a lot of the conversation is him talking to the tech guys and saying like, is it working? And just that. And then there's also some musical bits that are really wonderful little bits. Maybe not family friendly though. But very good, very down to earth. And then probably the answer you were looking for the folks listening. For anyone considering going down this crazy path, starting a startup, highly recommend this book right here. You can see I'm actually bookmarked it. I don't always do that, but it's called Founder versus Investor. It's co-written by, as you might guess, a founder and an investor. They've done some work together professionally and some work apart, but it really hits on the various struggles that a startup founder is going to hit, the investor's take on that struggle, and then the founder's take. And the incentives maybe with a good investor founder pairing is maybe aligned about 80%. That 20% though, very interesting to know about. Just the fine grain sort of contractual stuff that I'm going to run into as I consider having a board in the future, for example. But it's so well written in a narrative style that I highly recommend it to anyone considering going down this path.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. Really appreciate that. And with that, I wanted to thank you for being on the program. I hope the next time we see each other, you are basically in a jungle because you have so many plants. And I also want to thank Otto and Emma for appearing, yet we didn't really know they were there. So quite appreciative of their behavior. Thanks, Griffin.
Yeah, they did a good job. Thank you, Justin.